Hey everybody, if anyone's out there, I doubt they are at the moment, waiting for Miley to join us due to a weird technical quirk that Instagram has said that they've decided to do where um, you can only do IG Live interviews who have 1,000 viewers or 1,000 followers. I have 1,000 followers, but my interviewer does not. So she's going to join us here shortly, and she'll handle the interview, but I'm actually having to host the video. If you are interested in helping her out so that she can continue to do this wonderful interview series she's been doing, it's at Lines in the Stars. It's Maile Starr's. There we go.
Oh, yay.
Hey, Miley.
Hi, Bert. Hi, how you doing?
Cheers.
I love your
Um,
mug. Is that
Thank
Monet?
you. No, I have no clue who painted it, but it's a Midsummer's Night's Dream. And the quote's the famous final line going around the mug, um, which, so that I don't screw it up, we'll turn the cup around and read it. If we shadows have offended, think on but this and all is mended, that you have but slumbered here while these visions did appear. I was up at the Shakespeare Tavern this weekend as part of birthday celebrations, and uh, could not help myself, but there was a gift shop, and so
Oh,
there
yeah.
I
I, I don't think I would be able to survive the gift shop either.
was. Well, I'm glad we could manage to make the interview work despite Instagram's
Lovely,
unfortunate
abrupt.
decision making. Um, but as you were getting coming on, I was trying to tell anyone who's out there, which we got a couple people out there, follow Maile at her Instagram account. We want to grow her account. We want to about double what she's got at the moment so that she can run her own show on these interviews that she's been doing wonderfully for indie authors. I've gotten to catch a couple of them. That's how I found out that you were doing these. I'm like, hey,
Mhm.
I
Yeah,
want to get on your schedule.
yeah, an update on that. In a stunning turn of events, I'm at like 800 followers, so we're actually really close.
All right, so I know I sent out to folks and was going to wait till here to start ranting about Instagram creating a catch-22. So we want you to grow your followers, but we're going to take away a tool that helps
That,
people grow their followers.
and
Joseph Miller would be proud.
we have this workaround, but it just I offered to host you, and now I have to be like, hey.
Well, I'm glad we were able to make it work.
Right. Thank you, Nick, for following. All right. Okay. So I can start us off if you're ready.
Go right ahead. I'm hosting, but it's your show.
All right. Well, okay. So my name is Maile Starr, and I'm an author. But today I'm interviewing Brice, who is an award-winning multi-genre author. And his most recent work, Moonlight in the Tombstones, follows Detective Thomas Gibran. I hope I said that right.
Gibran. We
Ron,
stole the last name from the poet.
got it. Okay. As he tracks down the perpetrators of a robbery, but he has also written poetry, some fantasy, and a smattering of nonfiction. So thank you so much for hosting and doing this interview with me. Would you like to take it away and introduce yourself?
As you said, I'm Brice Odom. The J is always used there for professional, but that's about the only use it ever gets. As you said, I write multiple genres, primarily fantasy, or I like to describe it as the fantastic. So, fantasy, science fiction, ghost stories, magical realism, little Southern Gothic here and there. And then every once in a while, serious literature, but even those usually end up with something fantastical in it too. So they usually turn into magical realism. um,
But
But
true.
yeah, oh yeah. Uh, so it's been it's always fun to not box myself into a genre and just kind of go with whatever idea arrives and not be too worried about, well, I write science fiction, so that story idea is not science fiction. I'm going to leave that alone. I feel pretty comfortable just exploring whatever genre my ideas happen to be in.
That is,
And then,
sorry,
sorry,
go
I
ahead.
interrupted you. And I was, you said spattering short stories. That's probably what I write most often is short stories. Your tea was in honor of actually my first book, which is a short story collection and that had to be an interesting flavor combination.
Oh yeah. Yeah, for the uninitiated, I do book and tea pairings because I am a tea fiend. And I saw this described as eclectic, and I was like, well, that's my challenge. I have to make that work. So I put three different teas. It was raspberry, prickly pear, and then a spearmint eucalyptus ginger. And they should not have worked together, but they did. So
Well, I'm glad it did. It sounds like would go well with the eclectic short story collection.
yeah.
But I've been recently published in just this summer. Just had a story come out 3 weeks ago. Sounds about right. Thank you. Mythic Circle number 47. And that story is called Stranger in the Storm. And I've got a couple other stories that are out there that I have some hope for. Those decisions will be made over the next couple months. And then one story that's out there on called an ill-defined timeline. But so hopefully we'll have some more good news on the short story front over the next couple months. So.
Well, that is awesome. I'm glad that you got published recently. Congratulations.
Thank you.
So the first question that I had for you is, what inspired you to become an author?
So there's obviously a lot of ways to answer that, but I just kind of go with I can't think of a time that I wasn't wanting to make up stories and tell stories. When I was a little kid in elementary school, was writing short stories and now I was a terrible illustrator, but I was writing illustrated little stories called Adventure Max. The writing has improved, the illustrations have not. And I remember my granny had a typewriter, and so I remember dictating a story to her on that typewriter and about a lava monster. And as I went through middle school and high school, I just kept writing stories. I remember in middle school and elementary school, actually, there were writing contests within the school, and I'm like, oh, I'm going to write this story for it. And I would write the story for so long, I missed the deadline and never could finish the story for the contest. And then in high school, I just kept working on it, and I got to take an independent study class where I got to decide what I was studying, and I chose creative fiction, and was really, at that point, really saying, all right, I am trying to write stories that aren't just for me, but other people could enjoy. And you never stop that process, but I feel like it wasn't until about halfway through college or so that I finally started hitting a point where, all right, I'm writing stories that I think other people would enjoy, and I would put up with anybody. And so the oldest story in the short story collection is actually was the first story where I felt like I hit that level. And there were other stories after that where I kind of felt like I was falling backwards, hopping back and forth between that for a little while. But I've continued writing my stories and every once in a while attempting longer works. And sometimes it's writing challenges that kind of prompt. Actually, both my novels were prompted through some form of a writing challenge and contest. So wherever. There's the famous line, right? Nothing would ever get done if it weren't for the 11th hour, the last minute. And deadlines do help with creativity.
Yes, they also I found it to be a bit of a catch-22 because they'll stunt it until the 11th hour.
Yeah, it's like, I have no ideas. I have no ideas. I have all the ideas. Let's go.
We have to now. Yeah. I'm not at the 11th hour. I'm at the 10th hour. And I
Okay,
can't
we're
write
almost there.
it. The 11th hour will be in a couple of weeks before I have to turn my book in for edits, so we're just going to let it sit until that time.
Good luck. Yeah. You'll get it in. You'll get there.
Yeah. What's the 11th hour for?
Exactly.
All right. I'm so curious. The writing challenges that inspired your books. Do you remember what they were?
Yeah. So you can see them right up here. The fantasy novel is Letters from the Frontier. That's that blue one with the circular picture there. And for closer view, there we go. See, I'm prepared in multiple ways. Got it in the background and on the side table.
Sorry.
Yeah, I think.
Sorry, random perspective thing. It looks like an oval there, but a circle when it's farther away. I don't understand.
Interesting.
And
I've noticed it now too, and I can't unsee it. But that was a unofficial. I didn't do it officially. NaNoWriMo National Novel Writing Month Challenge. Me and I roped a couple friends into doing it with me, and so that I could have accountability. Whether they finish or not was actually, and I wanted them to, but that it was not. No. They're doing it was for my benefit. So thank you, Ross and Mary Catherine. But it was, I'm a school teacher, and that is my day job. That's how I actually keep a roof over my head, is not from my writing. And I cannot hit the official goal of NaNoWriMo, which is 50,000 words in 1 month. So I'm like, okay, I have this vague idea of a story that's epistolary, so tell the whole thing through letters. So, well, I could manage 5 letters a day. And so that became my goal, was 5 letters a day. And so, and I had one letter, I did smidge of cheat, which was when I had come up with the idea several months before. I mean, it was at minimum 6 months before. I had just tried the first letter. I'm like, right, let me write the first letter and then just think about it. And so having that idea, pairing it with the time crunch of needing something every day, thought was a good pairing. And now it was a wonderful but crazy experience, not just because of the time crunch, but because I started the challenge with I didn't have it necessarily written out, but I had a plot. And by day 2, realized that plot was not going to work, and had to throw all. I mean, there's a little bit that here and there that kind of stayed, but threw out most of it and really wrote the book off the cuff. And that was a lot of fun. And then the fact that I really liked how it all came out was even better. Now I spent a year editing it, but the basic. It was all basically there by the end of the first draft, and it was just polishing. And it was, that was one of the most fun writing experiences I had, because Tolkien has this idea that you're, as a writer, especially if you're doing world building fantasy, that you're not inventing, you're discovering.
Yeah.
And that experience really felt like, because I had thrown the plan so far out the window, it really felt like I was, I could understand what Tolkien meant. And that was a really exciting experience. And Moonlight and the Tombstones was a writing contest. Amazon, I don't know if you recall this, but Amazon had a serialized story platform called Kindle Vella. Yeah, and I think they had it for a couple of years, and it just didn't take off. But this contest was kind of, I guess, probably their last-ditch effort trying to get it to take off. They closed it in February. But I didn't even know about the contest. It was a 2-month window to write a novella, or a 10-episode story, a 10-episode minimum story, 10,000-word minimum story. And my friend sent me the contest a couple days before the students showed up, and it was already halfway through the window. And I'm like, okay, if I'm going to actually do this, I have to, one, write it rapidly,
Yes.
but not just because of the window, but because once the students show up, I don't know if you have any school teacher friends, but the first then you know exactly what I'm talking about. Once the students show up, your next 2 months are shot until you get into eventually a rhythm where you can start doing stuff again. But that first hectic couple months is nuts. And so I'm like, okay, I have 6 days to write 10,000 words, 10 chapters. And I turned out I wrote 18,500 words in 6 days.
Wow.
And the fun part of that was just hectic. Now it was fun, but it was just hectic. And like the brainstorming was titles. Just I started with titles. I didn't start with plot. I'm gonna start with titles. What's a good title? And we can come up with something from that. And Moonlight and the Tombstones finally popped out when I was thinking about werewolves. And I went, no, that's film noir. That's a detective novel. And I love film noir. I love Maltese Falcon and Chinatown and The Big Sleep and all that. And so I plotted out, or basically 10 chapter titles with like 1 to 2 sentence words of what's in that chapter, which held mostly true. There was a couple chapters that really changed, but from that initial 10 chapters, and I just went off to the races. I basically went to work, came home, wrote, fell asleep, got up the next morning, and did it all again for 6 days. And it was it came out really wonderful, and people who've read it, I got a wonderful review in Crimson Quill Quarterly, which is a fantasy magazine, a few last month, I guess. And Random Bookstagrammer, actually, who in Alyssa's novel Nook, who was actually also my first IG Live interview that I ever did, was with her. But she had got connected with her because she randomly saw the book on Instagram and loved it. And my ego had trouble fitting through the door that day. So that's how those contests produced those 2 books. I've got 1 book or 1 short novella that there's a couple places I'm going to try and go through to get it published first. And if those don't work out, I'll probably go through the same indie publishing route those 2 did. There will probably be a short story collection before I break down and do that with my next novel.
Those both sound like incredibly hectic experience.
They were, but they were very, again, if you like what comes out, it really is such a fun experience. But hectic, stressful is absolutely what it was.
Yeah. Yeah. I used to do writing during NaNoWriMo season. The entire month of November, I was like, all right, 50,000 words, let's go. And I was going to do it last year, and then my husband vetoed. Actually, he was like, "No, you're not allowed this year." And I was like, "Okay."
Did you ever hit the 50,000 words?
I really don't mean to brag every single.
That is awesome.
That's why I wasn't doing it. It's because if you put a goal in front of me, I will reach it at all costs. It includes eating. So he was like, "No, you're
prioritizing your health this year."
Yes, he was like, "No, you don't drink water, eat, or sleep during this month. You are going to do all 3 during November this year." Like, but I want to write, and he's like, "You were just in the hospital. You're not going to write this year." I was like, "Okay, fine." He was very insistent about it, so I was not allowed last year.
Well, fair enough.
Spoiler.
Darn.
All right. Okay, so it's sounding like you like 11th hour type writing stuff.
You see, that's the wonderful and weird thing about writing is sometimes it is, oh crap, I have a deadline to hit. I need to do this. And sometimes um, I had a short story published several years ago that was before I felt like I really started writing short fiction and really deliberately trying to get it published. But the first story that in this run of being more deliberate about writing and then trying to find homes for it, the first one was also Mythic Circle, who just published my one this month. But that story was called The Symphony of Rosaline. And I wrote about the first page and a quarter of what was, I think, about a 5-page Microsoft Word story. And then I hit writer's block and couldn't figure it out and put it down. It did not come back to it for a year.
Oh, wow.
And then was taking a shower and had shower thoughts and went, oh my God, that's it. That's the story. And I think I finished it within about 2 or 3 weeks after that. But so sometimes it's, I just I got to put it off the side and let it simmer, and we'll come back to it when we can. Or this summer I wrote a story, and this is one of the ones that's fingers crossed will get accepted here in the next couple months. Sword and Sorcery, which I don't write a ton in that genre. Have had one story published in that genre before, but it's not my natural inclination. And I think I had the first draft of the story done in a week and a half, and there was no deadline. I just had the idea, and it just I actually recently just got my front porch screened in, and that's been a game changer. Somewhere to go sit and write and have the outdoors. And I live in Georgia, and it's hot a lot of times, so there's a little bit of shade there, and the mosquitoes won't carry me away. And it's that probably helped that story get finished more than anything else. It's like, I'm using my porch. I spent so much money on this. We're going to use it.
Yeah. So you have a screen, because I thought mosquitoes.
Yes, screened in the porch, and mosquitoes. The mosquitoes are monsters here.
Yeah, they I grew up by a lake, and I was their favorite. My blood that I love so much. Yeah, it was unpleasant.
No, they suck. We figured out how to kill smallpox, but we can't figure out how to kill mosquitoes.
Probably important ecosystem somewhere.
I couldn't cite where I read this at all, but I was informed once upon a time that mosquitoes are the one animal we could kill off and not affect anything. So
that feels biased. That feels like people just didn't look into it enough. But I'm not. All right. Okay. So, all right. My next question for you: what is your favorite of the writing process?
Oh, favorite part of the writing process is probably starting and finishing. You get the idea. You have the burst of, this is going to be awesome, and then you have to do the work. And somewhere along the way, maybe you have one. Like for me, a lot of times it's one scene that I have clearly. Most of the time, part of the climax, and the rest of the story construction is, okay, how do I get to that moment? And that's fun, but it's the work, because you've got to, you've got to think through what you're doing. Okay, if I do that, what has to happen next? And I'm trying to fill in the blanks. I'm doing fictional algebra, trying to solve for X to get to my point that I want to get to. And that's not always the easiest thing. Now, my least favorite part of the writing process is editing. I don't catch my own mistakes that particularly well. And I do the best I can. I get friends to read it though, and who have much better eyes than I do. And then I work through their feedback and drafts and feedback and grammar and advice, and incorporate what I want to incorporate, not incorporate what I'm like, nope, throw that out. So, but editing is the necessary work, even if it's not the reward. It doesn't feel rewarding the way the actual writing process does, but it's the necessary work. If you're gonna send your stories out there, you've got to try and get them ready for other people to read.
Yes. Yeah. And it always feels like the editing process takes 3 times as long as however it took you to write the book, regardless of if it is actually taking that long.
Yeah.
I find story edits really interesting for me, but the second we in grammar sort of edits, I zone out.
Someone, I did this with a couple stories I wrote this summer, and it seemed to work. Someone suggested read the paragraphs in backwards order.
Yep.
That actually worked somewhat well. I feel like I had fewer grammar corrections when I sent it off to my friends because I did it that way. Because your brain fills in the gaps. Like I know what I wrote. I know what was happening here. I don't need to, except you wrote the word "the" 3 times in a row, and oh crap. And you gotta avoid those kind of mistakes if you're gonna get it published. So
yeah. I remember one of my coworkers. She can't stand typos or grammar mistakes. Like she hates them. So she's reading a professionally, traditionally published book by I think Brandon Sanderson or something. She's just like, and there was a typo. Can you believe it? And I was like, yeah, I absolutely can.
I saw a mistake in a book that I'm currently reading, off and on for the last few weeks, and I haven't gotten far enough to know. Maybe it's just counterfeit money, but they described money wrong. They said he got paid in tens, and then said Andrew Jackson was on the currency, and Alexander Hamilton's on the 10. Jackson's on the 20.
It's been out for 10 years. We all learned this.
But this is a mainstream published book. Are you telling me this publishing company didn't have an editor that knew who was on the money? Apparently not. So mistakes make it through.
Yeah, that's wow.
So I'm waiting. I'm like, maybe it's counterfeit money. Maybe we'll just get there eventually, and it'll just be counterfeit money, and the character didn't know.
Yeah, maybe the editor was like, "You got this wrong," and the author was like, "Wait."
Yep.
But who knows?
But yeah, editing, not fun. But you have to do it to avoid stuff like that.
And yet, stuff like that is going to be in the book because that's just how it goes. Right. Okay, so with your books, you write in a wide variety of genres. How do you go about creating your characters? Do you have a different way of doing it in each genre, or do you have like a set way of doing it?
So I have friends who are either very serious writers or writer. They just tell their stories for themselves, and they'll let me read them. Who are very, they'll plot out everything about their character before they even start writing a story. And one of my good friends who he's written stuff before and published, but he goes through large roles, and I hope he'll come back because he's very talented. But he and I were talking about our styles, and he said, "Brice, I write stories and you build stories." And he meant that because of I do a lot of plot as my primary planning, and the characters develop because of what they need to be in that plot. And so I really don't do a lot of in-depth character creation prior to writing. I try and figure out what they're going to need to do, and then figure out, in a lot of ways, as I write, okay, they're this person, they need to be in this state of mind, flow from there. And so sometimes that I think that works really well. I think Moonlight and the Tombstones, and you know, you're right. I don't know how you think about this, but for me, one of the most things I'm always constantly trying to get better at is dialogue, and more importantly, getting the characters to sound different from each other.
Yes.
And most of the time, most of the time I will feel successful if one character sounds completely different from everyone else. If you read his dialogue, you know it's him. But in Moonlight and the Tombstones, partially because I was playing with the noir genre and the tropes of the detective, the weary police chief, the femme fatale, the slimy businessman villain, the black marketeer, you know, because I was playing with all these tropes, that I think helped me create very individual voices for everyone in a way that I don't know if I've ever really pulled off in another story. So I think that's one thing that was why, despite its hecticness, I think came out so well, is because all these different voices really managed to come out. You know, some were weary, some were extremely sarcastic, you know, some were just smart asses, and some were very defiant, you know. And so if you do good plot editing, I think you get good characters. If you think about your characters and, all right, they're in this plot, how would they react to the situation? And so that's how I go about characters. It's just, I've always been a plot first editor, so I think that just is the more natural way for me to do it.
Yeah.
Writer, because we're talking about editing a second ago.
I mean, it still made sense to me.
Well, good.
No, yeah, I think I would definitely agree with I think the struggle of every writer is finding your own voice as a writer and then getting rid of it when you write dialogue. So and not everyone is there.
Yeah, and you know, at the end of the day, try and find the voices of the characters. But as you said, we spend so much time developing our own style. To some extent, you're not going to get away from it, and that's okay too. And that's true for most writers.
It's always a struggle. Okay, so you said that you are more plot reliant. So does your building process look more in depth? Would be more plot related, or is it similarly a discovery sort of thing?
So if I'm really doing some really serious world building, especially in the fantasy, a map really helps. There's a reason maps always end up in fantasy stories, is because you need to keep track of all the things you create as you go along. Like, oh wait, where did I put? No, they're going this way. Well, they have to go south and they can't go north there. So part of that is maps do really help with that. But you also, you come at it with a plan. You've got to have a plan, a general idea of what the world is, whether that's from a map or you're starting off in a village or whatever. You also have to be perfectly willing. I used the word discovery that I used earlier, and you have to be willing to discover where the world goes. And I think that creates really, from a writer's standpoint, creates really fun world building. That you are willing to okay, I wasn't planning going in Letters from the Frontier. There's a significant plot line in the book that ends up in mountains. The mountains were only on the map to create a border on the land. The fact that I ended up in the mountains was completely unplanned. But at the same time, I think what that does create is a sense of realness to your world, that if you are willing to go out and explore, then your reader will feel like they're along for that same ride. If you're not boxing yourself into your original idea, but allow the idea to grow and expand naturally with your imagination, and then I think the world feels real.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's because for me, I'm not a plotter like at all. That's I think why I enjoy not plotting is because I like doing that discovery thing with pretty much everything.
Uh,
It's
it, uh, yeah, I'm a combination of plotter and pantser. I'm gonna, um, which is good that I think I have at least a little bit of both skills. Because again, the plot of this one was thrown out a week, just a couple days into the process, and the whole thing basically came from the seat of my pants. Um, but then in the uber time crunch of Moonlight and the Tombstones, that being able to say, okay, we have to think through what's happening from A to B to C to D really rapidly. That allowed this little book to come out really well
yeah.
because um, we were able to switch gears to what we needed. And along the way is what the few things that didn't quite work out from the original plan, we were able to bridge the gap from point A to point B.
Yeah. And yeah, I think it is helpful when you have to write fast to have all of your plot beats out like that.
Yeah.
Especially if you have to write days.
Yeah. It helped a lot. And the fact that I had all the plot points in the first evening was because I was like, all right, I'm going to do this. If I'm going to do this, I have to have it. I have to be able to go tonight. And if I can't go tonight, then we'll wait till next year's contest, which is really a good thing we didn't because there's no more Ken Novella. But it came out well. It came out well. So hey.
Woohoo. All right. Okay, so you write in a wide variety of genres. You have said you yourself into like more fantastical settings more often.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't know why my imagination just is always. I mean, my favorite writer is J.R.R. Tolkien. My favorite novel is Dracula. So my imagination has always been pulled more toward people who write things that are rather fantastical. So,
Yeah.
so my brain has a tendency to go toward things that are more rather fantastical. It doesn't mean again I've written stories that were serious literature before. I mean, my second favorite writer is a guy named Michael Cera, who his biggest claim to fame is writing The Killer Angels and For Love of the Game. So the book about the Battle of Gettysburg and a baseball book. So, I have those influence for more real world stuff. I think they just usually end up getting combined into the fantastical elements, and those just become the magical realism stories. But what I get pulled to with that, I think for my own reading, I think does end up pulling me a lot toward those more fantastical stories. But I love Shakespeare. I love read classical novels that aren't fantastical. Started, eventually I'll get through it. But I started reading the Tolstoy novella right before school started, and then school started. So I think, and I think this is, you probably agree, I think one of the key things about being a writer is reading very broadly and let all the different genres and ideas and styles kind of mix in your brain in the background and like your eclectic cup of tea, come out with something new.
I think that it's so fun when authors do like genre ups. Katie O'Neill, I think she interviewed you.
Yeah.
But yeah, her first book was a sci-fi romance, and in a fantasy romance over and over and over again. I was like, oh, hold on a minute.
That was they had a good title too. It was
Love and Other Alien Concepts. Yes.
That is it. Love and Other Alien Concepts. Like, I don't usually read romance novels, but by the title alone, I was tempted to buy it. And she interviewed me. I need to buy it.
It's okay. Yeah, I've interviewed so many authors throughout and I've tried to read a book from each of them, but I got so behind that everyone has to do, and I'm like, you're on my TBR, I'm sorry.
Yeah, you can only do so much. But if any of my books have made it to your TBR list, I hope whenever you get around to it, you'll enjoy them.
Yeah, I am excited that I picked the one to do the comparing with, because I feel like all of the novels on my TBR now I'm due for a nice short story collection.
When I get to do book events, I always say, well, I got something for everybody. So
Yeah,
that story has, you know, there's microfiction. I think the shortest story is 158 words. Um, so if you really just like, I just need to read something, but I don't have time. I even have something for that. And then if you have a lot of time, there's a big world building fantasy story and sci-fi story toward the back of the book. There's detective fiction. So I'm all over the place.
that actually reminds me, since it seems like you like to do challenges, there was one challenge that I did for like a year back in college. It was 15-minute fiction Friday, where you had an image prompt and then you had 15 minutes to write a flash fiction, and it happened every Friday. And there were no allowed. You just had to post whatever you wanted in 15 minutes. Um, and I had a passing period between two classes that was exactly 15 minutes on Fridays, and that's when I do it. Yeah, it was very fun, so would recommend doing.
That is a great. A lot of the stories, a lot of the real short, the flash fiction, the microfiction, whatever you want to call it, stories in the collection, were writing exercises. That was all right. I got the back. I'll be honest. A couple of them was I have a back of a postcard that was in the church bulletin,
Yeah.
and the sermon has not grabbed me today. And so I'm going to see if I can write a entire piece of fiction, an entire self-contained story on the backside of this card. And so writing, some self-imposed writing challenges created some of those smaller works in that collection.
Yeah, I've never done that in a church setting ever.
No, you never write in the margins on the program of, oh, I have an idea while I'm sitting here during the offering music.
I
No,
do a project in the 6th row queue. Never.
preposterous.
All right. Okay. Sorry.
I was gonna say, but you write whenever whenever it arrives, you write it down. Otherwise, you will forget.
Well, yes, that is, I think, the number one rule that you have to learn if you're going to be doing this writing thing is whenever you have an idea, know that you will not remember it. Write it down now.
Mm-hmm. I've been in the middle of projects and kept index cards on my bedside. So if I woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning, I'd go ahead and write it down instead of saying, "Oh, I'll remember that in the morning," because I will not.
Yep. I remember the most stressful idea writing down thing that happened to me is back when I was preschool teaching, and it was like 4 months before my wedding. We were writing our own vows, and I hadn't written mine yet.
That is a deadline that matters.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was driving home. I had an hour-long commute home, and 10 minutes I figured out exactly what I wanted to say.
Yes.
I had 45 more minutes left in the car. So for 45 minutes, I just kept repeating it to myself over and over again. I didn't do anything else or think anything else. And it was the most stressful 45 minutes possibly of my entire life.
I was maybe one day these will see more the light of day. The preview of it would be in my little poetry collection, Grain of Sand, but there's a King Arthur narrative poem that was standalone originally, and then it morphed into a whole cycle of poems, 25 poems by the end. And yeah, went from one standalone to 25 in a cycle. And I was going to a friend's wedding, and I came up with a stanza as I was driving. I pulled over the side of the road, found a business card that was I was in sales at the time, and I pulled out one of my business cards and wrote the lines down, and then got back on the road to get to the wedding.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I make the mistake of I have a notebook, but it lives in my home, and I start bringing it in the car. All right. Okay. So pivoting away from fiction to nonfiction, have the Jimmy Carter work that you did.
Yeah.
And he's my favorite president of recent memory. So
So yeah, he is my favorite as well. I'm a presidential history buff. As I said, I'm all over the place. I'm a presidential history buff from the state of Georgia. Jimmy Carter is going to be my favorite president, the one who fascinates me the most. And the reason this book exists is because I'm a social studies teacher. My undergrad degree was history and political science. I got my education degree as a master's later on. And my history degree required a senior thesis. And so my little tiny nonfiction book is my senior thesis. Polished up, wrote an introduction for it, but it was a different experience from writing fiction, but in a lot of ways very similar, especially the research process is like the writing for discovery process. You're looking for information, you're trying to track it down. And I still remember there's one small town newspaper, because the book is really about the newspaper coverage. It is and the urban rural division bias and things like that that you can see in the coverage. And a lot of driving that was the Atlanta Journal. They were covering the entire scandal, which, keep in mind, is 1962. For the beginning of the scandal, the Cuban Missile Crisis is happening, and I'm not sure I put that. If I must have included it in the book somewhere, but I don't remember including that factoid in the book. But yeah, the Cuban Missile Crisis. The front page headline is the Cuban Missile Crisis, and then below the fold in the corner is Quitman vote ballot stuffing in Quitman County, and this one reporter would not let the story go. It just kept going and going and going, and that drove a lot of the research. And then I was looking at how the smaller papers were reacting to it as well. But there was one small town paper where the editor started writing editorials in response to the Atlanta Journal. And that made the paper was going to happen, but the paper really is like, oh, no, this isn't just going to be finished. This is going to work. And I did a happy dance in the middle of the library, and it was so much fun. But because I didn't choose to go the more formal history degree route, master's and PhD and so forth, it was sitting in my drawer for 10 years. It got won an award. It was recognized, or I guess honored, or I don't know how technically it would be. But it went to Honor Society Conference, the big history Honor Society Conference here in the state of Georgia for the university system, and they recognized 6 papers at the conference, and mine was one of the 6. So it was very well received. But then I chose not to go off to explore that as a career in academia, and so it just was kind of sitting there. And I had done my first 2 books, and I was like, well, I don't have anything ready. But as I was looking through my stuff, trying to figure out what I was going to do next, I'm like, well, this is here. Why not? And that was fun to relive, because I had to go back through it and very thoroughly edit, because I had to turn in my professors, it had already been most of the mistakes had been caught, but we caught a few more, and that hadn't been quite caught, and made sure the works cited was as correct as I could make it. And as far as I know, any works that are cited in there are being used by fair use under fair use law.
I mean, if you're accessing public records, I'm pretty sure you're allowed to.
Right. I mean, it's newspapers from the 1960s. I feel like they're fair game.
No one's coming after you for that. You're fine.
I think we're okay. Yeah.
Yeah. The fight. random fun copyright tangent. The thing that will screw you over the most is song lyrics.
Yep.
Because fair use, there's a percentage required, like you have to be under a certain percentage of the original work in order for it to cover fair use and not plagiarism.
Right.
And song lyrics, songs are very short.
Yep. I think it's like 10%, I think. But yes, songs are so short that, 4 lines might put you to 12.
Yeah, it's very so I have resolved to never use song lyrics ever. I had one of my characters, singing a lullaby, and I had a few beta readers going like, "What lullaby?" And I'm like, "You don't get to know, actually."
One of the stories that will be in my next short story collection, whether that comes out, that'll probably come out next year at some point. I don't know when, because it depends on when I give up on trying to push any of the stories into publication. But there is one story called 3 Songs at Christmas, and I gotta check on Frosty the Snowman. I think that's in fair use at this point, but I need to double check. But the other one is the what's his name? Dan Fogelberg. The song about the where the guy runs into his high school sweetheart in the grocery store, in the package store, and they end up catching up and sitting, and famously, it's like, and the snow turned back into rain as they part. And that's the one that I know is copyrighted, and so I will either completely rewrite that particular moment, or all right, what percentage am I at? But probably just rewrite the scene to not just say this is what the song is and leave off the lyrics.
Because I feel like that's just the safer way to play it. I don't.
Yeah. It definitely is.
That is not a battle I want to fight.
No, I do not have the attorneys to be able to fight it.
Yeah. The closest thing I have to an attorney is my great grandfather, and he's no longer with us. So I bring it up. His daughter, my grandma, she has dementia, so occasionally he's been coming up as someone who still exists. So I have a lawyer. My grandma said I could call him for lawyerly things. A Ouija board, but so with that Jimmy Carter book, what was, if you remember, because I know you wrote the original thing long ago, but what was the most interesting thing that you learned but didn't make it in the book?
Well, if I did not make any mention of the fact that the Cuban Missile Crisis is happening at the exact same time, and at the beginning of that scandal, that would be the one. But surely I did. But it would be one sentence, and I don't remember the one sentence. But the other thing, there was a documentary, because this election, Jimmy Carter's first election to state office in 1960, the state legislature in 1962, in the immediate aftermath of court decisions breaking apart the county unit system and the county rotation system, which rigged the legislature for rural counties here in Oregon. And so it's a really short campaign, but there's also just not a lot of original research. If you go look at the biographies about Carter and look at the footnotes about this particular event, they're usually using his memoir as the source. So, because he wrote a specific memoir about this event called Turning Point, hence the title of the book is Covering a President's Turning Point, because it's about the newspaper just covering that event. But in one of the documentaries, they tell the story when, in one of the court hearings, the initial court hearing that starts to throw things in Carter's direction. It's a bit of a roller coaster ride, but momentum starts to go with Carter at this point. The judge overhearing in the hearing, they forces him to produce the ballot box, because this is before there's any laws about poll watchers. These kind of shenanigans by county bosses is why we have laws about poll watchers today, and because not this specific one, but these kind of shenanigans were common by county bosses in the up until the 1960s, and it wasn't until the civil rights movement do we start putting these laws in place, largely because of the violations of civil rights occurring from these guys. And so, I mean, the box was locked, but he had complete control, and he had literally stuffed the ballot box with an alphabetized roll of ballots that he rubber banded together and threw in the ballot box. And so one of Carter's friends, I don't think it was his lawyer, right? But one of his friends who was part of the incident, tells the story about the judge opening the ballot box, and this is 1960 South, he's got a very large wad of chewing tobacco in his mouth, and he's got chewing it like cud, and he leans forward and sees the wad of ballots rolled up, and so knows immediately what has happened. And the lawyer said, or the friend of Carter who speaks in the documentary goes, and for a moment he stopped chewing, and I knew at that point we had it. So that was a really, I didn't include it because that wasn't my perspective. My perspective was the newspapers, but it was a really amusing way of telling about this small thing he found that he noticed about the judge's behavior that knew that he was about to rule in their favor.
That's fantastic. That's got to be the laziest way to cover voter fraud I've ever heard of.
Well, when you think you're God in your kingdom and no one can touch you, you don't care. Like, all I had to do was lock the box when I was done. They're not going to check the inside of the box and check my rolls.
Like, oh gosh, like, oh yeah. So if you throw a bundle of voter ballots in there, you're all going to know one person put them there.
Right, and I do want to say I seriously doubt any descendants of Carter's opponent, Homer Moore, is watching this video or will ever watch this video. But if you are, Homer Moore actually was not part of this scandal, other than trying to hold on to what he thought was a winning election. He did not coordinate with Joe Hurst, who was the county boss. He had no part in the ballot stuffing. He just happened to be the guy that the county boss wanted to win, and so he was not the antagonist. Carter's opponent wasn't the actual antagonist. So.
I imagine his political career was ruined after that.
He might have gotten to the state house eventually. Maybe. I'd have to go back and look. So for some reason, it's in the back of my mind that he did eventually, maybe after Carter left. Carter served 2 terms before he ran for governor the first time, and so Homer Moore might have eventually either gone state legislature or state senate, but he was an active community leader like Carter was. So Carter, as far as I know, Carter never said a bad word about him, and so I think he was perfectly fine in the aftermath.
Yeah. Okay, that's good. I feel a little. I mean, I don't know who this person is as a person, so I can't decide if I feel bad yet. I feel bad because some dude decided he wanted him to win.
Yeah, there's his face right there. He's about as stereotypical 1962 white Southerner as you can come up with.
That's about exactly what I picture if you say white Southerner from the 1960s.
Yep, got the Coke bottle glasses. Yep.
Slightly balding, black and white. There we go.
Yeah, there we go.
Right. Okay, so you are an award-winning author. Could you tell us what it was like to win an award?
Yes, and I actually find the fact that I claim this, it is true. Do not confuse This is not false advertising, but it is a very tiny award. But I won, and so I can, in a world where you have to create the image of being a successful writer, I can claim to be an award-winning writer for the rest of my life. And this is actually the first story I ever had published. And it was another, it wasn't until again really starting to try and genuinely try to get stories out there published. Really didn't start till about 3 or 4 years ago. So this is a while back. But I entered into a contest called Almost an Inkling. It was hosted by Signum University. I don't think I'm saying their name right, but it was hosted by online. It's mostly online university, but it's still legitimate university hosted by, and the contest main host, or at the very least, running the contest was named Serena Higgins. She's an academic. I got some of her books about the Inklings, and Charles Williams, who's one of the Inklings, and she's very, very respected academic in those circles. And she part of this university had this contest, and it was 6 weeks. Each week would have 2 awards awarded, and week 2 was the prompt when I'm like, that one, that's the prompt I can do. And it was Here There Be Dragons, and you had 500 words. That's all you had. And I wrote a story called, it's in the collections, called Dragon and the Brave, and that won the popular prize. So of the readers of it, I was chosen by the readers. And so didn't expect anything. They had a video. I think I have it posted on my YouTube. Actually, I don't know if I reposted on my YouTube channel, but it's definitely on my Facebook page. But it's a, she goes through the honorable mentions, goes through 3rd place, goes through 2nd place. My landlord heard me. I lived in a mother-in-law suite house behind another house, and he was outside at the time, and he heard me as I shouted for joy. Because I got through 3rd place and 2nd place, but I got nothing here. And then suddenly, boom, I won. And so I have the popular prize for one of the awards they gave out. And so it's extremely tiny, but I'm very proud of it because of my love of the Inklings and the fact that's what the contest was around. And hopefully one day I'll win another award, and I can say that with much larger prizes to claim, but that's my tiny little award, and I will hold on to it for as long as I can.
As you said, if it's the year's popularity award, I think you have every right to say you're an award-winning author.
That was the wonderful thing about it, was that it was, hey, people read it and they thought it felt like something the Inklings would write, and they enjoyed it. So.
And the New York Times best-selling author is half marketing and hate, so you're fine.
Right.
They use New York Times best-selling author for the exact same reason that you use award-winning author. It's the same concept.
Well, I go to Dragon Con every year here in Atlanta. It's the big giant sci-fi fantasy convention in Atlanta. Depending on the year, we are the 2nd or 3rd largest convention in the country. And I spent a lot of time with the fantasy track people, and there was a talk one day about who is the modern J.R.R. Tolkien. And the jumping off point is the fact that George R.R. Martin puts on his cover the quote from the Time magazine or New York Times or whoever said it, that he is the modern J.R.R. Tolkien. The rest of the talk is about how that's not really true. That if we're looking at how Tolkien wrote and his process, and that Martin is actually nothing like how Tolkien created, and that there's other writers that better fit there. But they was like, but if I had a major magazine call me the next J.R.R. Tolkien, that would be on every book I ever wrote. So you take what you can get and you run with it.
Because I think J.R.R. Tolkien, he does more of like a cozy fantasy, and cannot describe Game of Thrones that way by any measure.
But they were actually. It was a really interesting talk that I could go on and on about. I know we're getting close to the end of our time, but they were actually a lot more focused on process and Tolkien's idea of subcreation. And they're like, Robert Jordan is a lot more like Tolkien in process than than George R. R. Martin is, and that was actually who they settled on as their true modern Tolkien was the Wheel of Time author. So,
Oh,
yeah, but
that seems
yeah.
because I just think I've never watched Game of Thrones, but it's such a big cultural thing. I knew about almost every major plot point. And I would not describe that as Tolkien.
No,
Measure.
no, it's too brutal.
Yeah.
Tolkien knew there was evil in the world. He was just he balanced his idea that the long defeat, that you're never truly done with the battle, and you'll keep going until the battle really will just keep going until the end. And you will lose until his idea of eucatastrophe, until God steps in and changes the story. Was Tolkien's perspective, and so George R. R. Martin is really the reverse. There's horrible things in this world, and you thinking that good will last at all and has any hope in the fight is just naive. And Tolkien would be like, yeah, no, Tolkien would be like, no, I fought through World War I. The fact that you hold on to these ideas is why these ideas are so important, because of that darkness. So, yeah, Tolkien would not like George R. R. Martin at all.
No, I don't even think it would be a loving feud like that with him and C.S. Lewis. I don't think it would be a loving feud. It would be like I think they'd strike each other.
Yeah, I have the feeling that they would not personally get along.
Yes.
I think they would not professionally agree, and I don't think they would personally get along.
Yeah, I think their worldviews shine through in their writing, and I think if you got the two of them in a room together, it would be a bloodbath.
Yeah. We need to film it for all to see.
Yes. Okay, I don't know if this was a thing when you were young, but there's a YouTube channel called Battles History.
Oh, 100%. George R. R. Martin versus J.R.R. Tolkien is perfection.
Someone needs to make that because I can't rap.
Yeah, and that is one of the ones where it is very clear who they thought won.
Mm-hmm.
Like there are some of those you know who they think should win, and they clearly write it. Tolkien wins the battle. They clearly write it that way. There's some that are like, we don't know who won, but then there's something like, Freddie Mercury versus Frank Sinatra was like, you could go either way and we won that one, but
you could.
But Tolkien and George R. R. Martin, there was only one answer.
All right. Okay, so here we did kind of touch on writer's block. So I was going to talk about how you handle it. Do you motivate it, or do you try to work through it sometime?
So Simply Rosaline is an extreme example of you put it away and you come back to it. It just that took a year to do. But so that's definitely a strategy. I find a lot of times, though, also, because a lot of times I'll start typing. Most of the time I don't start handwriting a draft, but I'll type a bit and kind of get it started. And then inevitably I'll hit a point where like, oh, wait, I don't, all right, the initial flow is gone, and I really don't know where I'm going next. And a lot of times what I'll do in those situations, I'll flip to handwriting. I'll get a legal pad. I'll go down to the coffee shop, change locations, and go down to the pub, whatever. But I'll start handwriting, and I just try to write a little at a time. And I think what handwriting for me allows is if I get to a writer's block, okay, I'm at point A, I need to get to point C, but I don't know what point B is. I will skip ahead to point C. And when it comes time to type up the handwritten draft is when I fill in the point, what I couldn't do when I was handwriting. So I think going back and forth between handwriting and typing is actually really effective, a way of battling writer's block. At least it is for me. And then I think also changing scenery is really good too. I don't need, in fact, I do not like silence. So me going to the coffee shop or going to, down to the bar with, and having a seat with all the crowd going around. I'm not being performative. I actually work really well having the background noise of people moving about, and I'm everyone's got a little bit of ADHD, and for me, having the people moving around actually helps me a lot. Yeah, I'll look up and go, all right, there goes that person, but it's allows for the momentary distractions without, especially if you don't know anybody. If you're just down there by yourself, you're not there to talk to anyone, but so you can go, all right, oh, there goes the person. Okay, back to that. And so for me, those are my main ways of battling writer's block. Especially putting it away is to me the extreme example where I just can't figure it out. But that is also a very valid way to do it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I don't usually change projects. I'm usually a one project guy, whether it's a short story or a longer work. Poetry, if I'm working on something with poetry, I can flip back between that and prose, but I don't usually do two prose things at the same time.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah. And I would agree on the change scenery thing. I think a lot of people, oh, this is writing, you get stuck in your brain, and it doesn't occur to me for a long time that I could just go somewhere else.
Right.
That's a thing you're allowed to do the time you want to actually.
You can write anywhere.
I wrote, there was no water in the tub. I just took my laptop and hopped in the tub because it was so late that I couldn't go out to a coffee shop or anything. So I was like, well, this is the only new place I have.
Yep, my desk. I have a desk. I won't show you all the disaster it currently is. It has been clean enough to write at. In fact, Moonlight and Tombstone's first draft was written entirely at the desk. But I've also, all right, nope, I got nothing here. I'm going to go to the den and I'm going to stretch out on the floor and type that way, or I'm going to lay. Or I've got a little love seat couch, and I'm like, all right, I'm gonna stretch out my feet up there, and I'm over the edge, and start that way. And so yeah, change where you are in the house. Leave the house, whatever you gotta do. But just changing things helps a lot.
Mm-hmm. It's something that I think doesn't occur to you until you're like, oh, right, we'll just do that. All right. Okay, this is the last question that I have for you. So what is your current read or next up on your TBR?
Here. The book with I hate to call it out, but it's the current prose book I'm on is The Ballad of Black Tom. It's the one with the currency mistake or counterfeit money. Again, we're too early to tell. I'm hoping for the counterfeit money. That's been pretty good so far. It feels a little bit like noir. It's African American literature combined with H.P. Lovecraft, kind of like how Lovecraft Country, was written by someone who grew up loving H.P. Lovecraft, and of course you realize all the racist underpinnings of his work, and how do you deal with that? And like the dedication is to H.P. Lovecraft with all my conflicted feelings. So it's been good so far. It's a little short little book, but just school started. And then the other one is my birthday was actually just this past Friday, and my twin brother gave me a comic book or graphic novel history of the friendship of C.S. Lewis and J.R.R. Tolkien called The Mythmakers. And so those two things are the current read list. I just finished reading 11 books over the summer, so I used my time wisely on vacation. So I just got through a bunch of books, so I'll be on a little bit on the slow bit for a while.
Yes, as is the way when the school year starts up.
Exactly.
Yeah. I think the worst part for me is I taught at a year-round preschool, so we didn't have a summer break.
Oh, yeah. Bless. Yep.
It was rough.
Year-round And the ankle biters. Oh God.
Oh boy. Yeah, it was rough. There's a reason I'm not doing that anymore. It's,
Yep. I'm on the high school side of things, so I'm far away from that. So God bless all of you who do it even for a little while.
yeah, seriously. My coworkers were very, very good at their jobs, and then there were a couple people who were incredibly bad at their jobs.
That's true in every school.
And you have to pretend they're good at their jobs so that you can teach them how to be good at their jobs.
The key is just to make sure you have more that are good than bad. And our school does a pretty good job at keeping well more than the good than the bad. And we try and those who aren't up to the level they're asking will not be there too terribly long.
Yes. I don't fit in here. Correct. Anyway, okay. So first of all, the J.R.R. Tolkien and C.S. Lewis friendship of my like one of my favorite literary friendships that I know about it because they just sounded like they loved and hated each other so much.
They did, especially as time went on. So if you've read about, so you know Charles Williams then, because that's the figure I think where the not rifts. I don't think they ever have a rift, but where distance starts to form. And I think it was Tolkien himself who said it. Yeah, it was just kind of looking back on it, said it was kind of natural. That's where it started because Lewis and I both love the same thing, but I really just love that thing, and Lewis has a wider love of things, and Charles Williams could fill that in a way that Tolkien couldn't. And Tolkien Williams is a problematic individual for other reasons. Highly recommend reading about him. He's a fascinating figure. But yeah, and you can see why Lewis was very taken with them, but also why Tolkien was friends with them. But especially as he transitioned to being, because Tolkien really does grow into an old curmudgeon man. As he's looking back on it, and probably learned more about what Williams was like in his private life. I think had a little bit of I was right kind of a bit about him. So in his older age, he doesn't have many nice things to say about Williams. But when they knew each other and Williams was still alive, because Williams dies from complications of a surgery. He has to have emergency surgery, and he dies very suddenly. Up to that point, they are friends. Like Warnie Lewis, it was either Warnie Lewis or C.S. Lewis at one point write a letter to the other, and he says, I got to go. Tollers and Williams are already down at the pub. So they were friends who met up at the pub. But that's where the distance starts to form. And you get Narnia, of course, which is not the kind of fantasy that Tolkien would write. But it is, to me, I love this fact. I think it was in the book The Fellowship, which if you're a big Inklings fan, is a group biography of the whole group. It's called The Fellowship, The Literary Lives of the Inklings. And they say, it's unfair to say that Tolkien hated them for his whole life, because he does kind of forgive Lewis for them, because he realizes that what people enjoy about them. Not that he enjoys them. He never does enjoy them. But he gives copies of Narnia to his own grandchildren because he realizes what people like about them. And that's as much as you'll get out of Tolkien for growth.
That's kind of sweet, though.
They once showed up. Have you ever heard the story? They once showed up at a party dressed as polar bears.
What?
Yeah, they showed up to a party in Oxford dressed as polar bears. It was not a costume party. They decided just to screw with everyone at the party and show up dressed as polar bears and act as if nothing was wrong.
Peak college boy behavior, if I ever heard it.
Oh yeah, and they never left college, so they never lost that sense of humor.
There is nothing more ridiculous than a boy in college, is my personal philosophy.
Yeah. One of my one of my students, is on there and says, "We're not that bad, right, Mr. Odom?" No, My students are lovely.
You're past your ankle biting phase, so you're great. You're
Exactly. You're wonderful.
all right. Well, thank you so much for sitting with me and for hosting today. Would you like to tell people what you're working on and what you have coming up next?
Yeah. You can find all my works are on Amazon, but you can find them all easily enough at jbriceodom.com. /books if you just want to go straight to the book page. Currently, got some short stories out for consideration, so hopefully stay tuned to Instagram is where I probably make the most common updates, but social media, Instagram, Facebook, or Blue Sky, keep up with me there, and hopefully we'll have good news on the short story front more in the near future. Working on, I made a couple radio plays just for fun a few years ago, and I've gone back to it. So I've finished one, and I'm almost done with a second one. So hopefully keep an eye out, and I might try an at-home production of one of these radio plays and see how it goes. And heck, might have enough of those. We throw them all into a book and have that out at some time in the next year or so as well. If they just because they're there, and why not put them out where people can enjoy them? And outside of that, no novels at the moment. Don't have anything working in the longer fiction. We kind of taking some time with the shorter fiction at the moment, but also Moonlight and the Tombstones. I said that last year, and then I wrote this. So you never know what's going to happen, but we're gonna start editing short stories to get them ready for a short story collection, and that'll be sometime, hopefully no later than about a year and a half from now.
Awesome. Well, that sounds fun. I'm particularly excited about the radio story. That sounds very interesting.
One is a kind of my love story to Indiana Jones. Raymond Post and the 11th Tablets. You've heard it here first. And then the other is with a radio show host and a midnight show, midnight radio. And so it's called Mr. Midnight. And if you're anyone listening or yourself like country music, I am stealing that title from a Garth Brooks song. So.
All right. Well, thank you so much. And then one thing that I think I may have forgot to say, if you just right after this is done, if you post it and add me as a collaborator, I'll be able to add it to our indie author interview archive.
Fantastic. I will make sure I do so.
Thank you so much for working with me on this, and it was super fun talking to you today.
Maile, it's been a wonderful conversation. Thank you for having me on, and I'm glad that your All Points Bulletin and went out, and your folks who follow you and have been interviewed by you have been sending it out, and I know I'm going to continue to send it out. So hopefully you'll get to 1,000, and we'll be right back on track soon enough.
All right. Thank you so much. You have a good evening.
Thanks. You too.